Welcome back. We're going to be talking now about a part of our protecting our country that does not get nearly the attention that it requires, apart from, of course, the very considerable attention that the formidable Elaine Donnelly provides to it. And I'm talking about the culture of our military and the contribution that that makes, the indispensable contribution it makes to the readiness, to the warfighting capabilities, and ultimately to the deterrent power of the United States Armed Forces. Elaine is the founder and president of an indispensable organization, the Center for Military Readiness. We try to catch up with her with some regularity and always are glad to do so. Elaine, welcome back to Securing America.
Hi, Frank. Good to talk to you.
I want to visit first and foremost with you about a conversation that I've had recently with a very impressive, now retired Navy captain by the name of Hung Kao. He was warning that having helped build the Navy's budget when he was still in uniform, he's very worried about the fact that inadequate provision has been made for the kind of inflation that is now obviously savaging all of America's pocketbooks, but is going to be impacting very severely the military. If it's budgeted at 2% and it turns out it's 8%, there's a 6% differential. He says that's about $45 billion shortfall that'll have to come out of Hyde, presumably. And he fears that one of the places will be the training of our military. I wanted to ask you about this in a couple of respects, but just as sort of an overview, when you look at what happens when the budget gets reduced, too little time is currently spent on training for actual war fighting, it seems to me. If it is going to be the case that those funds are cut, do you expect that they would be equally applied to the training that's going on, say, critical race theory and transgender sensitivity and other social engineering priorities, or will it be just further reducing the amount of time and energy spent on preparing our forces for war?
It's incredible the way priorities have been turned upside down in only a little over a year. The purpose of our military itself has been redefined and repurposed to advance social agendas. The climate change agenda is very high on the Pentagon's priority list, but even above that is diversity. Diversity, equity, inclusion, that is the priority of the current Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. All branches of the service just last week came out with new equity and diversity plans, but some of them have been going on for a long time. And we just finished an analysis of what's going on in the Army. The Army has been trying to implement gender neutral standards in basic, actually not basic training, but the preliminary training, what you go to before you go to your occupational training. And they decided to change the physical fitness test into a combat fitness test. This has been going on for 3 years, and they swore up and down we're going to have women in combat positions. Way back 2015, promises were made over and over. Standards will be gender neutral, same for men and women. Guess what? The experiment just fell apart. And it rarely happens that social engineers do what structural mechanical engineers must do. When a bridge falls down, you figure out what happened to that bridge and you try to fix it with a different strategy. But this administration is continuing trying to prove gender equality, but something very rare happened. I haven't seen this since the Reagan administration. The Army actually admitted they had to make a change in that fitness test. Guess why? Because women were failing at such high rates. They started out at an 85% failure rate among women. That was the first year. Then they made some changes. They took out the leg lift option, which is pretty hard to do. They said you can do a plank instead. That was 2.0. ACFT 3.0, they had performance bands. Let's have the top women and the top men, and we'll pretend they're the same. Well, that didn't work out either. Then RAND did a study. RAND, not this isn't the Marine Corps, this is RAND. And RAND found out the failure rates among women, only 53% of the women were passing. The pass rates among men were way high, the Army finally had to do the right thing and scrap gender neutral standards. That hardly ever happens.
So, what does that mean in practice, Elaine? Are we going to find women not eligible for combat roles? Are we going to find women, being considered eligible, having met less rigorous standards? Are the standards for men going to be impacted,
They
for that
already
matter,
have.
as well?
They already have. The ACFT 4.0 does have lower standards. Initially, they tried to match the person to the job, and if you're going in the infantry, you had to do 30 of these special kind of push-ups. Others had to do only 10. Now it's 10 for everybody. Right there, that's a lowering of standards. What they promised, uh, they really promised over and over again, nothing's going to change. High standards. Well, it's changed. But here's the problem. A precedent now has been set. And we're already seeing signs that even in special operations forces, because of diversity mandates, these standards are being changed, but they don't say, well, we haven't changed the standards. What they've changed are the norms. It means that even if you fail over and over again, there's a lot of controversy in the Air Force about a female who's trying to be a commando, a combat controller. This is a very tough MOS. We don't have any women yet in this position. She failed repeatedly. She asked to be let out of the program, and they kept bringing her back and persuading her back. And everybody else knows, well, once you leave, go have a great career, but you're not going to be a combat controller. She's getting special treatment, exactly what the Air Force promised would not happen back in 2015. So I suspect this is going to be extended.
Yeah. This probably has two impacts. One is the obvious one on the actual fitness of these individuals to perform the missions that they've been assigned. And I guess I just have to ask, I had thought that basically the importance of having the entire service essentially be able to meet certain rigorous standards was that, if people are needed in certain positions, even if they haven't been specialists in those, they could be moved over in a case of emergency, particularly in, ground combat kinds of roles. But the second one would be presumably a terrible impact on morale of the force, that these, sort of special concessions or accommodations are being made. No.
Well, you talked about budgets. This new test is very expensive to administer. It requires special equipment, and every battalion level, I think it is, it has to have that special equipment. Much has already been invested into it. These tests were also age normed. So if you have a 3 or 4 star general, he has to do the same as a young infantryman. I mean, what kind of sense is that? None of it made any sense. But the prevailing ethos is equity. We must have women in the combat arms, and the pressure is on to get them there, even if they fail repeatedly. Now that the Army has set a precedent with the ACFT, they did what they had to do, quite frankly. But my concern is they're going to extend that new paradigm into special operations forces. We're already seeing it, not yet in Navy SEALs. The Navy SEALs are being they're under pressure. Every once in a while, you see a news story. Oh, the first woman to pass a preliminary test. We don't have any female Navy SEALs yet. But if we do, standards will have to be lowered for everybody in order to accommodate the diversity goal. So, at a time when, as you said, budgets are going to be strained and commitments could very well be stretched, we have a problem, certainly, in Europe and Ukraine and all of that. Very concerned about what will happen in the Pacific. If the Chinese decide to make a move out there, the Navy is being stressed. They're giving up ships. The Marine Corps is giving up their tanks because of budget considerations. This is a perfect storm that we're headed into. But the training of individuals is very important, and their priorities are all upside down.
Elaine, you've sort of backed the lens up to where I wanted to go in closing with you, and that is, as someone who has devoted basically, I think, your entire professional life to being an advocate for a strong, capable military rooted in, the values that have made it the greatest in the world in the past and that are needed today, as you've just indicated. arguably more than ever in our history. We face the distinct prospect, it seems to me, of a global conflict. And we've talked in just this brief interview about a whole series of things that are undermining the readiness of our forces, the fitness of our forces to perform the functions that they're assigned, um, the budgetary impacts that are going to reduce, in addition to training, of course, the hardware and the modernity of it, and the research and development that is going to give them the next generation of hardware that will make them able to, fight and win our nation's wars. Putting this all together, and as you say, our priorities are all screwed up. It does seem to me that what the bottom line is we are inviting aggression by adversaries in the expectation that they will not be confronted with the kind of formidable and decisive power of the United States military. And that is a formula for more conflicts and more loss of life and greater danger for the people of this country, as well as, of course, those serving in uniform. We're out of time. Thank you so much, my dear. I'd love to toss it back to you, but I can't today. We'll have you back on soon to do so. Thank you for the work you do at the Center for Military Readiness, Elaine. God bless you. Come back to us again soon. Next up, we will speak with Ambassador Yoram Ettinger about the Middle East and what we're doing to our interests there right after this.